Hey guys, today I will briefly cover the eye anatomy for AP Psychology. This is obviously one of the more difficult topics. Personally, I love this stuff. I'm a biologist first and foremost, so doing a little anatomy is something I kind of find exciting. But anyway, here we go. Now, for the basis of this quick little lesson, I'm only going to cover the main structures. So things like, the veins and fat globulates, I'm going to skip over entirely, okay? So here we go, y'all. First and foremost, you have the cornea, okay? The cornea is what gets scratched sometimes. Like you'll hear of a basketball player who goes in for a rebound and someone poked him in the eye and he gets a scratched cornea. I knew a guy one time who was doing yard work and he got dirt in his eye and scratched his cornea as well. So typically those things heal up, but I guess they hurt like heck. So there you have the cornea. Now surrounding the cornea, you have something called the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. So like in wartime, there's that old saying, don't shoot until you see the white of their eyes. It's an old saying. I'm sure some of you anyways have heard it. Don't shoot until you see the white of their eyes. So here's my hint. If you're going to shoot someone like you're in war and you're close enough to see the white of their eyes, you're probably pretty scared. You know what I'm saying? So when you can see the white of their eyes, you're scared. And that S for scared, S for sclera. Now behind the cornea, getting back here, directly behind the cornea, you have a thin little layer of liquid. That is called the aqueous humor. The aqueous humor. So just think like aqueous, like aquatic liquid, right? And there's another type of liquid we'll get to in a little bit, but just remember A comes first, like alphabetical order. So the first liquid we're going to talk about here is the aqueous humor. Bam! Now you get to the colorful part of the eye. That's called the iris. I will give you a short little hint for iris as well, y'all. I once knew a really, really pretty girl. Her name was Iris. So you can think the colorful, pretty part of your eye, whether it's brown or green or blue or hazel or whatever, it's the pretty part of your eye, just like that pretty girl once named Iris, y'all. Okay, now you have the middle of the eye, that little hole there, that, as you know, is called the pupil. That's a pupil. Little fun factoid here. Pupils can constrict, they can dilate. So if you're in a dim room, your pupils will probably dilate. They will open up to let in more light. Maybe if you're under the influence of some kind of medication or illegal substance, your pupil will dilate as well. So there you go. So far we've covered the cornea, the aqueous humor, the iris, the pupil, and of course the sclera. Don't shoot until you see the white of their eyes. Now let's remove this. Whee! Okay, now you get past the pupil and you have even more liquid. So this whole thing is full of liquid. That's called the vitreous humor. Just remember V comes after A. That's how you remember which liquid goes in what order. So we have vitreous humor. Okay, now finally, kind of bear with me here, you get to the back of the eye and you have the retina. Okay, that's where everything's kind of coming together. And in particularly, you have three types of photoreceptors. Okay, these three photoreceptors are found in a specific part in your retina called the fovea. Okay, guys, the fovea. So there you have your reds, your greens, and blues. So pretty much everything you see in this world is a combination of red, green, and blue. Of course, other animals like birds have even more photoreceptors, so they can see even more colors than we do. But that's probably for a different lecture entirely. Okay, now coming out of the back of the eye, you have the optic nerve. So that's carrying all this wonderful vision information directly to the brain, specifically the occipital lobe. So the occipital lobe is where the vision goes. You start to process it. Now, if you want to think about it, like if you're looking at this eye, you say, I am looking at an eye. So it's the occipital lobe that takes in the senses, but it's the frontal lobe that lets you process these things. But again, I'm getting perhaps a little bit ahead of myself. And then just remembering the word eye or whatever you're seeing, remember that's probably a little bit more of your hippocampus, your long-term memory at work. But like I said, I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself in terms of brain anatomy as well. Now, the one last thing I want to briefly cover, as this optic nerve is coming out toward the occipital lobe of your brain, there is something called crossover. So the information from your left eye is going to the right hemisphere, information from the other eye is going to the other hemisphere. So it crosses over at a part known as the optic chiasm. Okay, so there's crossover. So in class, we will talk a lot about split brains, where how you process information in terms of language. If the left hemisphere is processing language, whereas the right hemisphere is processing images. Okay, we'll get into split brains a whole lot more in class. We'll talk about some of the really, like, straight up, really fascinating research that's been kind of coming out in regards to epileptic patients. But that's for another time in another lecture. So there you have it, y'all. The eye anatomy, probably not the most exciting lecture I've ever had on YouTube, but it's definitely one that is important. And if you take the time to watch this, it will help you. Until next time, y'all, peace out. God bless. Have a great rest of the day.